Good evening. Welcome to Thursday Night Educational Series. We will be talking about the Emerald Tablet this evening. As we've said before, these are not tiled meetings, so please be sure to govern yourselves accordingly. We are recording. Please keep yourself on mute during the presentation. If there is a need to unmute yourself during the presentation, you can use the space bar to do that temporarily. Send all questions to the host via the chat, and we will be sure to cover them at the end. As we get close to the end of the session, I will post a survey link into the chat for everyone to fill out and give their feedback there. It's very welcome, and we hand that off to the powers that be. We have a couple sessions left here coming up. We have one more Socrates Cafe on the schedule, and then Brother Hans is presenting about conspiracies and misconceptions about Freemasonry. Whoa, jumped a slide. Hold on. There we go. We have our virtual reunion coming up. Our spring reunion. It'll be virtual for the 4th through the 14th degree. And we will then be on site live in person at the end of May for the 18th, 30th, and 32nd. There will be more information about the virtual reunion coming out soon. Links for registration and the registration process that we will be using for that. And now I will pass it off to Brother Tracy. It is all yours. Please go ahead and share your screen.
Okay, well, before to do that, I'm going to just hold up a couple books before I forget to show people some good source material. Good evening, brethren and others. My name is Tracy Anderson. I'm pretty new to the Scottish Rite and Masonry in general. And tonight I'm going to be talking about the Emerald Tablet. Now, I thought this would be a pretty easy subject to tackle because it's a very short publication. And what I found is how little I know about a subject. It's a very esoteric, and the words in this writing are words to chew on for a long time. But it's well worth it if you do decide to go ahead after this presentation and do some more self-discovery with the Emerald Tablet. I really encourage people to do this. I'm just going to do a quick reading. There's a Scottish historian that did a blog post that I'll share the source material at the end in my bibliography. But he wrote an article on did Sir Isaac Newton's study of the Emerald Tablet influence his universal laws of motion and gravity? Now that's an interesting point, and that goes to show you that the Emerald Tablet played a huge influence during the Renaissance, when a lot of science and art came to fruition. A lot of that was due to alchemy and due to the teachings of the Emerald Tablet. So he writes, "You're creeping through a hidden cave beneath a statue in ancient Tyana in modern day Turkey. And at the end of a dark, narrow passage, you find the entrance to a secret chamber. You crawl in and find an old corpse slumped on a magnificent golden throne, clasping something in his arms, and getting up close, you blow away the dust and reveal a glistening green glass tablet etched with mysterious symbols sparkling in the dim light, the source of which evades your understanding. You have just relived the story of the 7th century discovery of the 7th century Emerald Tablet of Thoth, or otherwise known as the Smaragd Tablet, authored by Hermes Trismegistus, which means thrice greatest, a legendary Hellenistic manifestation of the ancient Egyptian god Thoth and Greek god of Hermes. And it's said to be imbued with transmutational and transformative esoteric powers. And it's associated with the creation of the Philosopher's Stone. And it also contains the famous phrase, as above, so below. And we're going to be focusing on those words tonight because I think they represent sort of the distillation of alchemy. And if you understand what those words mean, that's huge for your own personal transformation. So the books, there's two books I want to just show you quickly. One of them is written by Dennis William Hawk. And before diving into this subject, I did quite a bit of research on who knows the most about this stuff. And Dennis William Hawk is one of those people. And I think he probably knows more about alchemy than any other living person, it seems like. And the book I recommend is called The Emerald Tablet. Sorry, it's backwards. I'm in mirror mode. But this is a great book. This will teach you how to relate the Emerald Tablet to your own personal transformation. And it's got some great, it's just a great read all around. And finally, the other book I'd like to recommend is for just masonry in general and all this esoteric subjects. It's called Alchemy and Mysticism, put out, it says the Hermetic Museum, but it's by, and again, these are going to be in my bibliography, but this is just full of these beautiful, rich artworks. Each one of these artworks, dealing with alchemy, has a multitude of symbols that, my recommendation is just to pick a favorite and then dive into that artwork and discover the meanings behind it. And it's just amazing how you can, what they did back in the Renaissance and before that. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and begin the presentation here. All right, is that showing up?
Yep, we can see it.
All right, it's full screen. Everybody sees the Emerald Tablet. All right, great. So the Emerald Tablet, it can be called the philosophy of the entire universe. And one thing I want to begin by saying is what Democritus said back in the 8th century BC, and this is true today. It will be apparent that it is difficult to discern which properties each thing possesses in reality. The quote is, it will be apparent that it's difficult to discern which properties each thing possesses in reality. Plato said science is nothing but perception. And in science, as a scientist, I'll vouch for this, that the phenomenon that is being observed is separated from the observer. When science observes a phenomenon, it assumes that the perceptual is the actual. However, it's not. And we see this in quantum physics and relativistic physics today. If you look at any modern physics, and this is the basis behind quantum computing, if you observe, for instance, a binary system, you pick one dot, the B dot will do something completely non random. And so your observation is paramount to what the actual outcome will be. And this is pretty amazing stuff, if you ask me. I grew up thinking science was just very strict and dogmatic, but now we're seeing just this complete, all this stuff in quantum physics that makes your mind just, it blows your mind. And again, during times of darkness and uncertainty, which we've had during this pandemic, this ancient wisdom can provide us with answers. And this is just an example how Hermetic principles are even blogged about today and being taught in the workplace. People don't tell them it's Hermetic or, alchemy, but alchemy is all about transformation. So in the book that I just described by Dennis Hawk, he lists a number of questions. And when I went through these questions, I thought to myself, yeah, in the past, especially, I answered yes to the following questions. And to a certain extent, if I get out of the wrong side of bed, I'm going to fall into doing some of this stuff. If you answered yes to any of this, like if somebody cuts you off, you curse at them or try to get even with them, or have a hard time throwing stuff away, like arguing with people about politics, race, or religion. You can't help but getting your feelings hurt when people tease or make comments, or the harder you try to accomplish something, the more obstacles get in your way. If you answered yes to any of those, then you may need some alchemy therapy. And again, if you want to read the full quiz, this is in his book, and he has kind of a key on how to grade this. So I'd be remiss if we didn't just touch on alchemy when talking about the Emerald Tablet. And in fact, this is mostly going to be kind of a pre-presentation on alchemy. Um, Al means in Arabic means the, and chemia means Egypt. And so you put those words together, and alchemy is the Hermetic art of Egypt. And this is just going to be a review of Hermeticism, and I'm going to run through these very quickly. Hermeticism is a kind of a trifecta of science, philosophy, and spirit, and it's one of the oldest religious and philosophical traditions, and it flourished in Ptolemaic Egypt. And Hermes Trismegistus is considered the founder of this tradition. Who is Hermes? The Greeks. So Hermes Trismegistus may also be known as Thoth. But the Greeks back in 664 BC, as early as that, they were intermingling with the Egyptians and shared knowledge. And so in the Greek tradition, you're going to see Thoth and Hermes being used you can use each term interrelatedly. And as alchemy spread from the Egyptians to the Greeks to Arab countries and eventually to Europe, alchemy was practiced extensively, especially during the Renaissance. Thoth is the father of alchemy and is one of the many netters. You could call these nature spirits, not really gods, and netters are the archetypes of nature. So mythological figures associated with Hermes include Thoth, which I just described, Hermes, which is the Greek form of Thoth. And in mythology, the bridge between soul and matter, which we'll get to in a bit, is the Roman version of Thoth, and he's the messenger of the gods and traveled between heaven and earth. And he bridged the gap between mortal man and immortal deity. Enoch in Judaism and Christianity, Idris in Islam, Moses in Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, and Akhenaten as an Egyptian pharaoh, as well as Nabu in the Babylonian Empire. Unfortunately, during the war with Emperor Constantine, during the fire at sorry, I'm trying to find out which. This is the library, Alexandrian Library. Thank you, Hans. So unfortunately, most of the literature associated with this was destroyed, but fortunately, traces exist. And being opposed by the church, the Hermetic tradition was forced to the occult underground, and this includes societies such as the Freemasons, Rosicrucians, Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and Thelema, as well as modern paganism. So we're going to start by just reading the Emerald Tablet, and it's a very quick read, and it starts, "In truth, without deceit, certain and most veritable. That which is below corresponds to that which is above, and that which is above corresponds to that which is below, to accomplish the miracles of the one thing. And just as all things have come from this one thing through the meditation of one mind, so do all created things originate from this one thing through transformation." Now, this is the part of the Emerald Tablet that we're going to sort of chew on and dissect in a little bit during this presentation. Its father is the sun, its mother the moon. The wind carries it in its belly. Its nurse is the earth. It is the origin of all, the consecration of the universe. Its inherent strength is perfected if it is turned into earth. Separate the earth from fire, the subtle from the gross. Gently and with great ingenuity, it rises from earth to heaven and descends again to earth, thereby combining within itself the powers of both the above and the below. Thus will you obtain the glory of the whole universe. All obscurity will be clear to you. This is the greatest force of all powers because it overcomes every subtle thing and penetrates every solid thing. In this way was the universe created. From this comes many wondrous application because this is the pattern. Therefore am I called thrice greatest Hermes, having all three parts of the wisdom of the whole universe. Herein have I completely explained the operation of the sun. And so that was a really easy translation. There are many other translations, that aren't as elegant, I would say. So, but they have a little bit more detail within it. So I just chose, the one that's easier to understand. And it sort of hit me when I read this, that there's something transformational that happened when I started Masonry. And I think it's because the foundation of Masonry can be found within these words of the Emerald Tablet. And and that's when I started getting into Hermetic wisdom, as well as Carl Jung has a lot to say about alchemy and the Emerald Tablet as well. He gets more into the psychological side of things and explains why your psyche works the way it does, but it's very similar to how the Emerald Tablet and alchemy explain it. So the Emerald Tablet, this photograph I always include painting. I always include a painting from the history of Manly Hall's the history of all
secret teachings.
Secret teaching is of all ages. Thank you. And that's what you have here. There's a lot of symbolry in here that I'm not going to go into, but the Emerald Tablet describes the Philosopher's Stone, or it's it's also the Lapis Philosophorum, and it describes a mysterious material called material prima. Now, the interesting about alchemy is you can do it both physically and allegorically, and sometimes both. People choose to do both because it's that the act of doing the physical chemistry that's described here, will have an impact on the person doing it. And it contains opposites that are still incompatible and in most violent conflict. Well, that kind of describes, the ego and the unconscious that Carl Jung would talk about. And sometimes our ego doesn't even, most of the time, it won't even see the unconscious and our what he terms as our shadows, and that contains our demons, so to speak. And if we can acknowledge our demons and know ourselves better, we can get closer to enlightenment. So the alchemy text that started it all is the Emerald Tablet, and it's said to hold the entirety of the philosophy and practice of alchemy. And if you understand this text, you can decode all the secrets of nature and then further engage and find deeper meaning in alchemy. Now, you can take that with a grain of salt. If you choose, not to, believe that you can decode all the secrets of nature, that's fine. This is very personal. I will guarantee you, though, that if you apply the messages behind the Emerald Tablet, you will better yourself. I can almost 99% guarantee you that. And then this is the cover of the book I was talking about, and it sort of describes how to create the Philosopher's Stone. First, we bring together, then we putrefy. We break down what has been putrefied. We purify the divided. We unite the purified and harden it. In this way is one made from man and woman. And when you read this, it sounds lot of the terms are putrefaction and breaking down materials. And again, this shows that there's a lot of chemistry behind this, but as well, you can apply this to your own consciousness. And again, I would suggest choosing a tapestry that you like and sort of diving into it and decoding all the encoded symbolry behind the tapestry. So we're going to just dive into as above, so below. Everybody's probably heard this and everybody has their own interpretation. I would like to give you sort of an alchemical interpretation. And if this helps you, great. If it doesn't, then feel free to apply your own meaning behind it. So in Hermeticism, again, that which is being studied is a reflection of the observer, and the two are intrinsically linked. You can see in this figure, the center of it is your mind, and the mind can be thought of as the bridge between the above and below. The below is the body, mind, soul, and spirit, and the above is the sorry, I said that wrong. The body and the terrestrial are the below, and then it goes further to the above, the celestial and the soul, as you move outward to the outward rings, and finally you reach the spirit. So the above includes the heavens, the cosmos, and the soul. The below can be thought of as the earth, the land of mortals, and the physical form. And the interesting thing that the Emerald Tablet teaches us is that there's correspondence between the above and below. These two things are in union, and it's the mind that bridges the two. And alchemists are searching for this one thing. And this one thing expresses itself as a trinity. Remember, it was brought up a couple times in the Emerald Tablet, that one thing, the Philosopher's Stone. It's expressing itself as a trinity, and we see this concept many times in a lot of religions around the world. So the one thing can be thought of as the Prima Materia, which is the first matter, and it's a trinity, and again, it's found in many religions. So in alchemy, this trinity is broken down into three principles: sulfur, salt, and mercury. Those are the symbols behind this. So when you see the term sulfur, you're talking about the soul, the consciousness. It's represented as an oil, and it's psychological, dealing with a self-consciousness. The body, represented by salt, is structured thought patterns that give us form, and its form is an alkaline salt, and it's thought of as the physiological. So again, this is the interesting part of it. It's structured thought patterns that give us form. So you get into this sort of philosophical idea of, are the things in my mind truly real? Are my beliefs that are entering my mind truly the truth? And that's the sort of subject matter that we're dealing with when we're diving into the Emerald Tablet. And then finally, Mercury is the spirit, and it's the mind. The form is the liquor, and it's spiritual, and in God consciousness. And so there is an interesting fellow. His name is Avery at Chimea. I don't know his last name, at Chimea Arts, but he teaches alchemy, and I like the way he presents this. And I'm going to present what sort of distillation of what he. You can find this on YouTube in my bibliography at the end. But the act of thinking can be structured, and those thoughts can be embodied to give concrete reality or an appearance to an idea. The mind is the faculty of consciousness, and in consciousness inherently has the power to think. The soul, on the other hand, is the actuating cause. It's what starts everything. And it is the prima materia that the Emerald Tablet talks about, the one thing. So think about the soul and what that represents to you. The above is consciousness, and it corresponds to below, which is the body. Therefore, if you know, with these alchemical teachings, alchemy is thought of as the understanding of the relationship between the unconscious and physical matter. How does consciousness relate to matter? Well, it's through the mind, your brain. But what generates the mind? And that's the soul. So the mind inherently has the power to think, and it generates this perception of matter. And again, I bring this up as that mind is in the center, and as we move outward, we get into the soul. The soul is what generates those thoughts. And so there's an interesting blog post, as I mentioned, by the Scottish historian Ashley Cowie, and you can read more about this, but line 10 of the Emerald Tablet is states, this is the greatest force of all powers because it overcomes every subtle thing and penetrates every solid thing. And if you read the definition of gravity, gravity is the force that attracts a body towards the center of the earth or towards any other physical body having mass. And another thing is that Newton came up with a trinity of universal laws describing a body and forces that act upon it. So there's a lot more in this blog post, and I encourage you to read it. It's a wonderful read. Just search for Ashley Cowie and Isaac Newton and the Emerald Tablet. He offers a lot of compelling evidence as to how alchemy and the Emerald Tablet influenced. It wasn't apple bouncing on it off of his head that made him realize what gravity might be. It's sort of an amalgamation that includes a heavy dosage of alchemy as well as the Emerald Tablet. And that's all I have for you. Thank you for hanging in there during our technical difficulties. And here are my sources. And if you want to go more into Hermeticism, I did a much longer talk that can be found on the Scottish Rite of Minneapolis website. So I encourage you to head over there if you want to learn more about Hermes Trismegistus. So with that, I'm going to ask if there are any questions, and I'm glad that there are people here that probably know a lot more about the subject than I do. So with that, I'm going to stop screen sharing here.
Well, thank you, Brother Tracy. There was one question from Scott. If you want to go ahead and unmute, Scott.
Okay.
All right. Actually, the one poster you had of the circle with the concentric rings, and for what you're talking about, I was wondering, kind of a as above, so below relation, kind of likened to the movie The Neverending Story. Yeah, any thoughts or relations to that?
Describe the Neverending Story again.
So young Sebastian reads a book where alongside in it, young Atreyu is going on his adventure, and it gets to a point where they realize they are one and the same person on their own adventure, and comes to resolution at the end, and of the book, which was only the beginning of Sebastian's story.
That is actually a great interpretation. And my own interpretation is yes. Your body here on Earth is going to be represented in the above. And it's really the mind that is on a journey to that understanding. and is really that bridge to gap the below and the above. But yes, I totally agree with that sentiment. And again, everybody has their own interpretations, but if you're one to believe that God is within you, then yes, your body here on earth is sort of a transient form of that God that will eventually become one with everything. All is one, one is all.
Thank you. Very good question, Scott. And before we go into any more questions, I did post the survey link into the chat. So I don't have any more questions in the chat. If you have a question, please go ahead and feel free to either wave at me or unmute and ask your question, please.
Yes, Tracy?
Yes.
I just was wondering, in one of your illustrations there early on of Thoth, I thought I saw a lion associated in there. Did I see that or did I not?
A lion. Yes, there is a story, and I think that relates to one of the stories that Thoth. Well, actually, are you talking about the dragon, or was there specifically a lion?
It looked like a lion, but you went by it pretty quick, and so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't have a chance to absorb it well.
I'm
old.
I'm not sure about that. Hans, do you have any insight?
Yeah, that's probably the lion who is guarding the key to obtaining the next level of disclosure. And the lion is guarding, and he who is brave enough to take on the lion will obtain the key.
That just hearing that, there's a lot about, and especially you can read about this in Hawke's book. He talks about, why is this wisdom being guarded? Why don't we just give everybody this wisdom? And there's a lot to be thought about that. I'm not going to dive into it in this discussion, but if you think about it, alchemy really is the key to making the world a better place. And I think it's going to play an important role in the future. And by alchemy, I'm speaking more generically in terms of transformation. But there is something to be thought, why don't we just give this to everybody? We don't, for many reasons. And I think the lion you just talked about perhaps alludes to that.
Well, I think the lion plays a fairly significant role in the third degree. After all, we do talk about the lion's foot.
Yeah, and the tribe of Judah, who basically has the lion represented in it.
Yep. And again, I'm new to masonry, so I'm glad I'm surrounded by a breadth of knowledge to help fill in these gaps for me.
Now, Tracy, you skipped by that very last picture very quickly, where that where a man is peeking outside of the sphere. You remember that last picture?
Oh yes.
Would you dare to elaborate on that?
Oh boy, I did. I think I did elaborate that on my Hermetic text, but I never thought about the peaking man. Will you fill me in on what you're thinking?
Well, that's kind of a little bit of a spoiler, but so the whole concept of as above, so below, and so and vice versa, is by and large kind of started at the time in around the 14th century with Paracelsus, and where the whole concept of microcosmos and macrocosmos were basically identified as one and the same, meaning that the microcosmos is a manifestation of and within the macrocosmos, and that interaction has fueled pretty much alchemy throughout the centuries thereafter, and to a great extent led to this observation that we are part of a universal cosmos, while carrying that universal cosmos in ourself, right? So that's now that little symbol or that little picture that you show towards the end is basically mankind daring to expand beyond the microcosmos to take a peek on the and gain a fundamental or a grain of understanding, I should say, of what that macrocosmos actually represents.
Yeah. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. And like I said at the beginning, diving into this subject, this is probably the toughest subject I've ever gotten into, because there's so much that's ineffable behind it. And I guess one thing I just wanted to mention is that so professionally, I'm a microscopist, and I've done that most of my professional life, which involves looking through the microscope. And I think that's one of the things that sort of led me to researching this, because thinking about the microcosm and macrocosm, when you look into the microscope, you see patterns emerge that are existing throughout nature, and this sort of gets into mathematics and all the numbers that are prevalent in nature. But yeah, those are some interesting insights.
Yeah, the whole work of alchemy, it's called the great work.
Right.
So.
And I've just begun the great work.
Yeah.
As I found out by presenting this subject. But I do the way I get into these subjects is doing the research, and presenting sort of forces me into it. And so I appreciate everybody standing by while I attempt presenting this subject. So.
Well, we are happy to let you attempt there, brother. Don't worry about it. Anybody else got questions?
Yeah, Tracy, one other question.
Yes.
What were some of your aha moments, so to speak, while going through Freemasonry? What sort of things did you realize you hadn't before?
Well, the big aha moment for me is that I grew up in a Masonic family, and as a child, I didn't know that. My mother and father were not really they weren't regular meeting attenders at the point they had me. I'm the youngest child, but I will say that after having gone through after the passing of my father, I decided to join the Scottish Rite, which is he was a 33rd degree Mason, which I found out after his death in the Scottish Rite. And after I went through the Scottish Rite, and after I was raised in the Blue Lodge, everything sort of made sense as to how my mother and father taught me, if that makes sense. The ethics that they taught me about it's very it reminds me very much of what the Emerald Tablet teaches and what alchemy teaches, and so I would say that that was my big aha moment, was wow, my parents, even though they didn't talk about Masonry, or my mother was involved, and I'm sorry, the name eludes me, the branch of Masonry, the Eastern Star, thank you. She was a member of that, and generations before both of them, going back many generations. And I think that I want to thank them for instilling in their children their philosophies that are based on Masonry. That was the big aha moment for me, is just the ethics and the philosophical views of life. And they're pretty simple, they're just the Emerald Tablet is, pretty simple when you read it, but boy, can you take apart those words and chew on them forever.
Very true. Brother Tracy, there was a question from Brother David. Is alchemy the origin of the use of oil, salt, and wine used to consecrate cornerstones?
Oh boy, that's beyond my knowledge base. Hans, do you know?
I pass that on to John. I have my own interpretation on that.
I really can't say myself. I've never researched that possibility either.
Well, the common, and I need to be a little bit careful, or I presume that not all might be Mason, but are the oil represents our light, okay? Salt, the salt of the earth, and I'll leave it with that, meaning the essence of what the earth is. And wine is the spiritual begifting of, or the enlightenment of the spirit. And when you combine oil, salt, and wine, which are also the for the Master Mason, the payment for the Master Mason, you basically provide all the life essential ingredients to the building that you consecrate.
Thank you. Brother Matt has a question. Can you give an example of a practical application of alchemy for self-betterment?
Well, I don't know a practice. So I'll give you an example in my own life. Before Masonry, I was that person who, if somebody cut me off, I would want to get back at them in my own mind. I never, would outwardly do something or cut them off or anything, but boy, did stuff like that irritate me and anger me. So I think once you understand that you are a part of the universe in a very amazing way, you start to temper those irritations, and you don't really let them get to you. You understand that, hey, maybe they made a mistake. It's essentially thinking that thought that entered my head, is it reality? It's thinking that because it's a thought that enters your mind, it doesn't mean it's real. That sounds sort of crazy talk, but it's true, that and everybody has their own truth, but there's sort of a universal truth that we're trying to get to, and that's what all of this alchemy and the green tablet teaches us. That's my interpretation anyway.
Well said. Brian, you had a question.
Oh, unmute. Yep. Sorry, you're unmuted now.
I have a fun comment that came up to me years ago about the six-pointed star and as above, so below, and prayer. And with prayers of supplication, when you are praying to God, your words are ephemeral and airy and are going up from you. So it's the white triangle as the prayers and supplications rise to the heavens. And when those things become manifest, the solidity of the black triangle pointing down is the manifestation of your prayers coming into reality. Thus, the six-pointed star of the prayers together manifesting back into physicality. I love that.
That's amazing.
All.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Thank you. That was cool. That is cool. All right. Anybody else got questions that they would like to ask? All right. I will say thank you, Tracy, again for the presentation. Very much appreciated. And that would be a wrap for this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.